Well, uh, what really has to be, I think, and what will be, I think, the watchword for 2019, and this is echoed by, I'm looking now at Fortune.com's predictions. We're going to look at different kinds of predictions. We're going to look at, news-oriented predictions, business-oriented predictions, psychic predictions. We're going to take it all in. we're gonna cover the gamut here. So, but as Fortune magazine predicts that a lot of the crises that have emerged during this past 2-year period since 2016 will be partially solved by pragmatism, as people realize, it's time to wake up, and you have to take certain steps to make sure that we don't blow ourselves up. And I think that pragmatism will start to kick in as people begin to see, as we've recently seen, markets tanking, instability, that the idea of pulling back, the idea of what's good for me is something that's good for me that isn't good for the other guy. And what's good for the other guy is something that's not good for me. I mean, this is the kind of mentality we're dealing with now. And it's not just in this country. It's in many other countries. There's this fear, this anti-globalist contempt and fear that somehow, if you work with other people, you're going to get left behind. So it's me first, and the heck with everybody else. So potentially, we are in a situation where Congress could start legislating again, now that we have actual two-party government now. With the Democrats having taken over in the House. This allows some legislation to go forward, which had been stymied by Republicans, particularly very right-wing Republicans called the Freedom Caucus. These are, you may remember a few years back, the Tea Party candidates. Well, that's what these guys are. And perhaps their day is waning in 2019. Some other predictions from Fortune magazine is that there will be no real consequences for our Saudi Arabian Prince Mohammed bin Salman. He may be pulled back a bit, but he'll retain his position. He may not be very involved in foreign relations until all of the controversy over Mr. Khashoggi's death, which, if you remember, if you don't remember or hadn't heard, a journalist by the name of Khashoggi was murdered in Saudi Arabia. Not only just murdered, but he was killed and dismembered. And it's widely believed that that murder was ordered by the prince himself. So that's going to have some consequences, but not to the degree where he will lose his position. There's predictions of, well, let's look at the economy. What's going to happen with the economy? That's something everybody's interested in. There may be worsening trade wars, but as that affects our growth, and as small businesses and farmers get hit hard, and as the political climate starts to change a bit, there may be some new negotiation and some compromises made. These trade wars are happening particularly with China, but there'll be others too. So let's talk about entertainment. So there's a trend here, which is very interesting. The entertainment industry, movies and television in particular, are and have been going through a huge upheaval. And the latest, of course, is the streaming technology that we now have, that more and more people are using to view movies. This has been, and at the head of that is Netflix. And just to show you how big it is, for the first time ever, programming on Netflix has been, or Netflix itself as a network, has garnered the most nominations for the Golden Globes, over HBO, which had been the dominant one for years, and certainly over network television. This shows that there's a major change going on here. We also have Netflix distributing movies first and putting movies simultaneously in theaters and offering them on Netflix as well. This is upsetting some people who are, sniping pretty hard at Netflix for doing what they're doing, but they're doing a good job of it, to tell you the truth. Now, 2018 was apparently a very good year for movies. They had the highest box office that they've had in quite some time. But it should be understood, and they say this all the time, and it's very misleading. It just seems silly that I think studio executives and such fool themselves with these kinds of pronouncements and statistics. Yes, the box office was higher, but it doesn't necessarily mean that more people were going to the movies. I think a few more people were going to the movies. And that's mostly because of some very good films that came out. In particular, things like Black Panther and the Marvel films altogether. Very popular and very well made, and great stories too. We had, I think, 3 Marvel films, big Marvel films. And there have been other great films too that are getting, real notice. Things like Bohemian Rhapsody, the movie about the rock band Queen and its leader Freddie Mercury, and Black Klansman, directed by Spike Lee. So there have been some very good films out. So that always is, generally rewarded with decent box office. But the big reason why you're seeing higher box office numbers is because theaters are charging more for tickets. And they're charging more for tickets because they are realizing that in order to get people into the theaters, they are going to have to make going to movies a big event. And in doing so, they put in lounge chairs, these chairs that go back with big tables, full-on menus of food that you can order, a real upscale experience. And of course, and on top of that, then you have different formats of film. You have IMAX, and you have 3D technology, and so when you're going to a movie, you have choices of 3 different ways to see this movie. You can see it, regular 2D. You can see it in 3D. Some of them you can see it in IMAX, and each one, of course, if you do IMAX or you do the 3D, it costs more. And this is to get people who might not come to the theaters because they're streaming the movies or waiting for them to be on cable. This is a approach to get them into movies, into the movie theater, sorry. So, as a result of that, the tickets prices are higher than they've ever been. And this is concerning because moviegoing used to be the most affordable entertainment experience you could have. But it's slowly not becoming not that anymore. So that people of modest or low income are going to have particularly harder times affording to movie tickets. That's one thing. And with what the streaming services offer, if say the economy starts to stall and people are struggling financially, in those times it used to be that movies did very well because people could inexpensively go out to the movies, even if they couldn't afford going to the theater or going to that live show or whatever. They could still afford to go see a movie. But increasingly that's going to be changing. And so we're seeing that, the streaming technologies, when you can stay home and watch a movie on Netflix, and a good one, that is going to increasingly become the less expensive alternative. And the other change that's going on is because the way we watch programming on television now has changed so dramatically. And networks have not kept up with that. They still use Nielsen, which, if you're not familiar with what Nielsen is, that it is a company that has for decades made its money from providing networks with ratings for their shows. And these ratings tell the networks which shows are popular. These ratings influence the networks as to whether they're going to keep a show on the air or whether they're going to cancel it. But most importantly, these numbers that the Nielsen figures provide help networks to know how much they can charge for advertising during a particular program. If a particular program has got a lot of people watching it, they can charge more money for advertising time during that program. And if it has less people watching, well, then they can't charge as much. So the very foundation of their business model is based on Nielsen numbers. But Nielsen numbers are increasingly irrelevant because more and more people are either watching shows on DVD, so they're recording shows. And that doesn't show up on Nielsen as well as some of the the traditional approaches. They're watching it on online on their smartphones. And so